Before Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, he first had to master the battlefield within. In an age of political treachery, endless wars, and immense power, Marcus stood apart, not as a tyrant but as a philosopher king. While others sought to conquer lands, Marcus sought to conquer ego, desire, and fear. This is not just the story of a Roman emperor, it's the story of a man at war with himself in the quiet hours of dawn, writing meditations not meant for the world, but for his own soul. How did a boy born into privilege become a reluctant ruler? What did he whisper to himself before leading legions into battle? And how did his personal struggle with grief, duty, and mortality shape the last great age of Rome? In this video, we journey through the life of the Stoic emperor, from his rise through the imperial ranks to his unshakable inner discipline, forged through suffering, loss, and wisdom. This is more than history. It's a mirror to our own lives. Discover the full story of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled not just with might, but with mind. Let the philosophy that shaped an empire shape you. Most people think of Roman emperors as tyrants, ruthless, indulgent, drunk on power. But Marcus Aurelius was not that man. Behind his marble statues and stoic gaze lies a story that rewrites everything you thought you knew about strength, leadership, and what it truly means to rule. He commanded one of the greatest empires in history, yet spent most of his nights writing quietly to himself. In private journals never meant to be read by anyone. He didn't write for fame. He wrote to survive, not from assassins or rebels, but from his own thoughts. "You have power over your mind," he wrote, "not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Marcus wasn't born hardened. He wasn't raised in battle. He was a thinker, a child so obsessed with philosophy that his tutors feared he'd never care about politics or power. Yet this boy would grow to lead armies, face pandemics, betrayals, and war. And through it all, he remained guided by one principle: control yourself before you try to control the world. So, how does a man become emperor of Rome, yet stay true to philosophy? How does he resist the temptations that crushed so many rulers before him and after him? And why, 2,000 years later, are millions still turning to his words for wisdom, peace, and power? This is not just a history lesson. This is a story about you. Because Marcus Aurelius faced the same enemies you do: fear, anxiety, anger, temptation. But he fought them with principles, not swords. And he wrote down every scar, every victory, every doubt. In Meditations, he left us the battlefield map of the mind. The world crowned him a king. But long before that, long before the armor, the battles, the throne, Marcus Aurelius made a decision. He would rule himself first, and only then would he dare to rule Rome. Marcus Aurelius was born into privilege, the kind most people could only dream of. His grandfather was a Roman consul, his great-grandfather a senator. He grew up in a palace dressed in purple, surrounded by marble statues and silk. But while the world gave him power on a silver platter, his mother gave him something more precious: discipline. She was a deeply devout woman, frugal, strict, and deeply moral. She warned Marcus early about the dangers of luxury, of flattery, and of pride. She made sure he didn't grow soft in the palace halls. Instead of toys and games, Marcus was given books, especially on philosophy. Even as a child, he wore the simple cloak of a Stoic, rejecting the jewelry and extravagance expected of Roman aristocrats. The boy wanted truth, not treasure. His real transformation began under the eye of Emperor Hadrian, who noticed something rare in the young Marcus: seriousness. Still a teenager, Marcus was adopted into the imperial family as the planned successor of the aging Antoninus Pius. It wasn't just politics, it was mentorship. Pius, a model of calm and virtue himself, raised Marcus not as a conqueror but as a steward. Under Pius, Marcus learned that ruling was not about control, but about duty. He spent years studying philosophy, law, and administration. He read the works of Epictetus and Plato. He surrounded himself with teachers who challenged him, not praised him, and he began practicing the hardest lessons of all: patience, humility, and restraint. Imagine being told from a young age that the world will one day be yours, and choosing instead to learn how to let go. Marcus trained himself to expect nothing, to attach himself to no outcome. His Stoicism wasn't a philosophy of detachment. It was a strategy for survival in a world of temptation and chaos. By the time Marcus reached adulthood, the path ahead of him was clear. He would become emperor, but instead of preparing to dominate others, he focused on mastering himself. Rome would give him a throne. Philosophy would give him the strength to carry its weight. When Marcus Aurelius finally became emperor in 161 AD, he didn't celebrate. He didn't throw a feast, give a speech, or even smile, because he knew what it meant. The weight of the Roman Empire, its legions, its politics, its people, now rested on him, and the man who had trained his entire life to be indifferent to fame was suddenly the most powerful man in the world. But with power came problems. Almost immediately, Rome was under siege, not just by enemies at its borders, but from within. Famine gripped the countryside. The treasury was strained. Bureaucrats whispered behind closed doors, and a deadly plague was waiting just around the corner. Marcus was prepared in mind, but the tests ahead would push him past the edge. Instead of ruling alone, Marcus insisted that Lucius Verus, his adoptive brother, share the throne as co-emperor. This shocked the Senate. Why share power when you don't have to? But Marcus didn't crave control. He craved stability. He understood that collaboration and humility were greater virtues than pride and domination. And yet, behind the scenes, he struggled. His notes from this time, what we now call meditations, reveal a man fighting fatigue, frustration, and despair. He reminds himself daily not to be angry, not to complain, not to let the emperor consume the philosopher. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others, he wrote. Be indifferent to what makes no difference. While others wore crowns with pride, Marcus wore his like a burden. He avoided the theater, refused luxuries, and lived with astonishing simplicity. He slept on a camp bed. He dressed plainly. His meals were modest. And yet, he ruled over millions. What kind of leader chooses discomfort? What kind of ruler wakes up early, writes to himself about self-discipline, and seeks no reward? Only one who fears losing his soul more than losing his power. Marcus Aurelius did not want to be emperor, but he accepted it, not as an honor, but as a duty. And that's what made him different. Not his intellect, not his strategy, but the way he carried the crushing weight of power without letting it crush him. No philosophy survives without fire, and Marcus Aurelius was tested by fire again and again, not metaphorically but brutally, in the form of war and plague. The world around him began to collapse. But instead of losing his way, Marcus turned even deeper inward, using Stoicism not as theory, but as armor. In the 3rd year of his reign, the Roman legions brought back more than victory from the east. They brought death. The Antonine plague swept through the empire like a dark wind. Millions died. Cities emptied, families were erased, panic spread faster than the disease. No emperor, no matter how wise, could stop it. Yet Marcus did not flee. He stayed in Rome. He attended meetings. He worked late into the night. He visited the sick. And every day he wrote, not speeches, but reminders to himself: don't give in to fear. Don't surrender to chaos. Focus only on what you can control. At the same time, the empire's northern borders ignited in rebellion. Germanic tribes crossed the Danube, torching villages and slaughtering Roman settlers. Marcus didn't send a general. He went himself. The emperor-philosopher became the emperor-soldier. He camped with his men in the mud, slept under trees, and wrote his meditations between battles. And still, he didn't lose himself. In the thick of war, surrounded by blood, he wrote about kindness. Amid betrayal, he reminded himself to forgive. In the face of uncertainty, he practiced detachment. This was not weakness, it was unshakable strength, the kind forged only by inner mastery. He didn't crave victory, he craved clarity. You may leave this life at any moment, he told himself. Let that determine what you do and say and think. While others sought glory, Marcus sought meaning, and through pain he found it. Most rulers in history fell to excess, ego or fear. Marcus Aurelius endured war, plague, and sorrow, and yet he never lost the most important battle, the one within. No Roman emperor ever left behind a more intimate legacy than Marcus Aurelius, not in marble, not in conquests, but in words. Meditations is not a book written for the world. It's a window into a private war, one man, face to face with his doubts, his responsibilities, and his soul. He didn't call it meditations. He called it to myself. These were personal notes scribbled late at night on the battlefield, during sleepless hours in his tent, or after council meetings where betrayal hovered in the air. They weren't meant to inspire. They were meant to survive. Each line was a weapon against despair, a reminder to stay steady. And what did he write? Not commands, not victories, but questions, doubts, daily reflections. Why am I angry? What am I clinging to? What will matter tomorrow? He repeated ideas like mantras. Accept everything. Expect nothing. You could leave life right now. His words are raw. He writes of sleeplessness, of rage, of the temptation to give up, but also of beauty, the order of the stars, the cycles of nature, the briefness of breath. He searched for balance in everything, and he found it not in the world, but in his own mind. For Marcus, philosophy wasn't an escape from duty. It was a lifeline through it. Where others sought distraction, he sought clarity. Where others drowned in emotion, he steadied himself with reason. And meditations was his mirror, a place to be brutally honest, where the emperor disappeared and only the man remained. What makes these writings so powerful is their universality. They're not grand proclamations. They're reminders anyone can use. If it's endurable, endure it, he writes. If not, stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end too. 2,000 years later, we still read his thoughts because they weren't written for us. They were written by someone trying to be good, not to look good. And in a world obsessed with image, that kind of honesty is revolutionary. By the time Marcus Aurelius neared the end of his life, he had seen more suffering than most emperors ever would. He had survived revolts, betrayal, war, and plague, not just in his empire, but inside himself. Yet through it all, he held the line. He never abandoned his Stoic principles, even when his body began to fail. In 180 AD, while on campaign in modern-day Austria, Marcus fell ill. Some say it was the plague that had never fully vanished. Others say it was exhaustion. Decades of stress and sacrifice had finally caught up with him, and in his final days he didn't panic or pray for more time. He did what he had always done. He reflected. He reportedly asked for his friends, his generals, his scribes, not to make a final speech but to remind them to carry on, not his name, but his values. He didn't want monuments or titles. He wanted Rome to stay strong and his son Commodus to rule justly. That last wish would go unfulfilled. Marcus had hoped that philosophy could shape a good emperor out of his bloodline, but Commodus was not his father. Where Marcus sought simplicity, Commodus chased pleasure. Where Marcus practiced restraint, Commodus indulged every urge. The emperor who ruled himself would be succeeded by a ruler consumed by ego, and it broke Marcus's heart. Even so, Marcus didn't blame the world. He accepted it. As he wrote in his Meditations, everything is ephemeral. Fame, the memory of fame, all of it fades into nothing. He knew his influence might not last forever, but that wasn't the point. He had lived with integrity, and that was enough. He died in his tent, away from marble halls, surrounded by soldiers, not senators, no grand procession, no golden tomb, just silence, and the quiet, immortal echo of a man who lived by reason, ruled by virtue, and died without regret. Marcus Aurelius didn't just lead an empire, he showed the world, for a moment, what leadership rooted in wisdom looks like, and then, like all things, he returned to dust. Long after his body turned to dust, Marcus Aurelius continues to live, not in statues or coins, but in minds. His words remain sharper than any sword, etched not into stone but into the habits and philosophies of millions who seek clarity in a chaotic world. Why? Because he didn't preach perfection. He practiced resilience. His life is proof that greatness has nothing to do with being born strong, and everything to do with choosing strength moment by moment. He taught that emotions aren't the enemy, but losing control to them is. That pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. That the real battle isn't outside, it's always within. At the heart of his philosophy are a few core principles. First, control what you can, accept what you can't. In a world where everything changes, your health, your fortune, your relationships, the only permanent foundation is your mindset. Marcus didn't pretend to control the storm. He focused on how to stand in it. Second, virtue is the highest good. Not wealth, not power, not pleasure, but justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance. For Marcus, the emperor's crown meant nothing if it wasn't worn with integrity. He could have lived in luxury, but he chose simplicity because it made him free. Third, memento mori, remember you will die. Far from being morbid, this was his reminder to live fully, without wasting time on petty grudges, distractions, or vanity. You could leave life right now, he wrote. Let that determine what you do and say and think. These aren't just ideas. They are tools, a code of conduct, a strategy for surviving heartbreak, injustice, anxiety, and even power. They helped Marcus stay grounded while ruling the known world, and they can help you stay grounded in your world too. He never claimed to be perfect. In fact, he constantly reminded himself how far he had to go. That's what made him powerful, because the man who admits his flaws is the man who can overcome them. And that, in essence, is Stoicism. Not cold detachment, but warm discipline. Not denial of emotion, but dominion over it. In the end, Marcus Aurelius left behind more than an empire. He left behind a blueprint, not for conquering the world, but for conquering the self. His life wasn't a story of dominance, but of discipline. He didn't build his legacy with legions. He built it with principles. Most rulers try to bend the world to their will. Marcus bent his will to serve the world. While others feared losing power, he feared losing self-control. While others built monuments, he built habits. And in that quiet, deliberate life, He showed that the highest kind of strength is the ability to govern your own mind. He never asked to be emperor. He never thought of himself as divine. But the power he developed, the power over impulse, over anger, over fear, was rarer than gold and stronger than armies. That's why his words endure, because he lived the way we all wish we could, with clarity, purpose, and courage under pressure. His story isn't ancient, it's immediate, because we face the same struggles: distraction, comparison, uncertainty, and his answers are still waiting. Not in commandments, but in reminders. Don't waste time. Don't chase what you can't control. Don't let the world make you cruel. He proved that you can lead without ego, that you can be powerful and kind, that your life doesn't have to be loud to echo through time, that it's not the crown on your head, but the content of your character that makes you a ruler. So when the storms of life rise, when chaos tempts you to react, when pressure pulls you from your values, remember Marcus, not as a statue, but as a man who stood in the middle of madness and chose reason. He ruled himself, and only then did he rule Rome.